The bell note was still rolling around the Moonhall dome when Corvus Shadowfang stepped into the center circle and raised a cracked law tablet over her head. Wet red ran from her thumb where the edge had cut her skin. Wax dust clung to the heel of her palm. Around her, 7 clan banners hung from the rafters, each one still, as if the cloth itself were listening. High Steward Mailer stood on the upper lip of the dais with his staff planted, chin tilted down in practiced contempt. Ridian was not on that upper lip. He stood beside the circle instead, close enough that Corvus could smell smoke oil and rain on his coat, far enough that he did not touch her. "You read it wrong to trap me," she said, voice hoarse from shouting all evening. She turned the tablet so the carved footline caught the light. "You carved over the order and then called it custom. The footnote says reversal is valid in this hall, by this bell, under these witnesses." Maelor bared his teeth and snapped. "Unclaimed mouths do not interpret right law." Corvus did not look at him. She looked at the ring of faces, at the same witnesses who had watched her marked and shamed earlier. "Then let someone else read the line if your eyes fail." Ridian stepped forward, not into her space, only into her line of fire. "I'll read it." Mailer slammed his staff once. "You invoked an emergency pre-bond claim. You are bound to your own declaration." Ridian answered without lifting his voice. "I invoked it. I can renounce it. Read the line." The bell's tone finally died. No one moved. 6 hours earlier, the same gray stone had been bright with noonlight, and no one had bled yet. Moonhall opened its treaty conclave in year 731 AS with ritual precision and stale air. Torches burned low and resinous in wall brackets shaped like snarling wolves. So smoke laid a thin skin over everything, over the long table where votive bowls sat, over the iron rail around the dais ring, over the polished boots of delegates who pretended their hands were clean. Corvus came in through the side arch used by hired blades and cooks, not through the clan gate. She wore no banner color at her shoulder, no knot ribbon at her wrist, no alpha mark at throat or brow. Her sword remained peace-tied in black leather by hall order, and she kept her hands visible because she knew where eyes would go first. Nessa Reed, Kitchen Wolf and Corvus's household anchor, found her before the opening bell, apron still dusted with barley flour, braid half escaped from its tie. She pressed a heel of hard bread into Corvus's hand and muttered, "Eat now. They'll keep you standing long enough to make your knees shake." Nessa's thumb flicked at the empty place on Corvus's collar where a clan clasp might sit. "And don't let them bait you into naming one you never had." Corvus bit the bread, chewed, and watched the banners sway when the side door opened. "I won't lie for their comfort," Nessa snorted. "Good. Lie and they own your lie." She bumped Corvus with her shoulder quick and warm. But when Maelor asks, he'll make it sound like law and mercy in the same breath. He is neither. The first call to order cracked through the chamber. Ridian Vale crossed the upper stair with 2 attendants who stopped at the rail and fell back as custom required. He did not look like a boy forced into his father's seat. He looked like a blade left too long in a hot forge, bright and tight and close to warping. A silver wolf pin marked him heir, and the skin under his eyes had that bruised shade of someone sleeping in scraps. When his gaze swept the lower ring and landed on Corvus, it did not slide off. It measured. It calculated. It lingered an instant too long before he moved on. The claiming circuit began after the treaty recitations, as it always did before a war vote. Maelor stood in the center with a chain of hall tablets looped through his left arm and called each name toward him. Bound wolves stated pack, heirs stated alpha line, mercenaries stated sponsoring house or admitted temporary service. Those words were written by chisels long before any of them were born, and this hall worshipped chisel marks. By the time Maelor called Corvus forward, the chamber had settled into that dangerous rhythm where people mistake repetition for truth. "Name your pack and alpha claim," Maelor said. each syllable clipped clean. Corvus stepped into the chalk circle and set her boots shoulder-width apart. No pack affiliation. Maelor lifted his chin. State your alpha claim. No alpha claim. A murmur moved like mice in grain behind the front rows. Maelor let the murmur grow because he knew how to use silence as a knife. Then he raised the nearest tablet and read from it in a ceremonial drone, one hand splayed over a carved line. Under simplified customary law, any war service wolf entering treaty floor must be socially moored by declared pack or declared alpha. Unmoored status may be marked for public caution. He lowered the tablet and fixed her with eyes gone pale from age and certainty. You reject both ties. Record her socially unmoored. A scribe stepped with a brush and daubed dark ash across the back of Corvus's hand, a stripe that said outsider in every clan dialect present. Heat climbed her neck, not from shame exactly, from fury pressed into a small place. She held her arm still. If she flinched, Maelor would call it proof of guilt. If she spoke too fast, he would call it hysteria. So she lifted her chin and said, clearly enough for the rafters, I refuse your label the same way I refuse your leash. Maelor gave her a pitying smile sharpened at the edges. Refusal noted beside mark. Rydian rose before the next name could be called. Boot struck stone once, twice, and then he was at the rail. I invoke emergency pre-bond claim, he said, voice carrying over every whisper. I claim Corvus's tracking core under my war block until vote close. The room snapped toward him. Corvus turned slowly, ash stripe still wet on her hand. You don't have my consent. Emergency clauses do not require it, Maelor cut in, too quickly, as if he had expected this and approved. Rydian's jaw worked once. My block needs her core. If she remains unmoored, rival blocks can snatch contract lines mid-vote. Corvus laughed once, hard and short. Say the true thing. You wanted me boxed. She stepped right up to the rail, close enough that his breath touched her cheek. I reject you in the circle. The words rang louder than Maelor's staff strike. Rydian didn't retreat. His eyes flicked to that ash stripe, then back to her face. You can reject me. The claim still stands until challenge. Then I challenge. Maelor raised his staff and struck the floor again. Challenge deferred. War vote precedence. His smile came back, thin and satisfied. Place her in holding until hearing. 2 hall guards moved in, but Corvus walked before they touched her. She handed over her peace-tied sword with careful fingers, because if the knot broke in their hands, they would call it aggression. As she passed Rydian, he spoke low enough that only she heard. I did what I had to do. She kept walking. That sentence is the oldest coward in this hall. Holding was a stone cell off the service corridor, not a dungeon pit, because Moonhall preferred civility as theater. A narrow slit window sat too high to reach. A clay water jug sweated in one corner. Someone had left an iron ring bolt in the wall from older days, filed smooth now, so no one could claim cruelty. 6 hours before reversal hearing sounded short when Maelor announced it to the hall. In the cell, 6 hours became a slow chew on the nerves. Corvus sat with her back to the wall and scrubbed the ash stripe with water until the skin turned raw and pink. The mark darkened but did not lift. She could still smell it, lamp black and bitter herbs, each time she flexed her fingers. Somewhere beyond the door, hall feet passed. Soft leather of kitchen staff, heel click of scribes, heavy thud of guards changing watch. Time came in those sounds. When the latch whispered, she rose fast enough to make the hinges sigh. Nessa slipped through with a covered bowl, the household anchor she trusted before any lawkeeper, shut the door with her hip, and knelt beside the bench as if she had every right. Steam lifted from the bowl. Lentils, onion, and a scrap of smoked meat floated in thick broth. Eat before it skins over. Corvus took one swallow and felt heat return to her chest. If they catch you, they'll dock my kitchen shift, Nessa said. waving it off. Then her face changed. Listen, I saw him. Who? Maylor. Service corridor outside archive. Nessa leaned closer, voice almost gone. He had 2 wax-sealed tablet bundles. I know the seal color for right law. He broke one, swapped order, resealed with Hall stamp. I was carrying turnips and he told me not to look. I looked. Corvus set the bowl down slowly. You're sure? I scrape wax from tables every feast day. I know fresh from old by smell alone. Nessa lifted her fingers as if still pinching a flake. Fresh resin. Wrong tone on the red. He changed Claw's order before your hearing. A pulse jumped at Corvus's throat. The trap had shape now, not just anger. Can you testify? Nessa's mouth tightened. I'm kitchen. They'll say I smelled onions and imagined law. They'll have to say it to your face. Nessa held her gaze, then nodded once. I'll stand. The latch scraped again, and Rydian entered alone. He had left his silver pin behind. Good, Corvus thought. Metal rank would have made her throw the bowl. Nessa stood, lifted her chin at him like a challenge, and slid past without waiting for permission. At the door she paused and said to Corvus, Don't let him talk over your ribs. Then she was gone. Rydian stopped a pace inside the cell and kept his hands open at his sides. I asked to speak. You were told no. I came anyway. Corvus leaned one shoulder against stone. You don't hear walls, do you? He swallowed that and glanced at the ash stripe she had failed to scrub away. I did not ask for the mark. But you gave Maylor the stage for it. Rydian stared at the floor for a beat, jaw flexing. War vote is tonight. If my block fails, border villages burn before snowbreak. I needed your trackers under my banner where no one could outbid or threaten them. And you decided my body was collateral. His head snapped up. I never meant. Intent is smoke, she said. Action is iron. He took that blow and stood with it, shoulders set, but not hard. Then strike me with the right one. I used law as a weapon because I was desperate. I thought if you were tied to me on paper, no one could tear you away before vote. Corvus pushed off the wall. You keep saying war, vote, blocks. Say my name once without wrapping it in strategy. Rydian opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. Corvus. Just that. No title, no argument. It landed in the cell like dropped flint. Before either of them spoke again, a guard called down the corridor for Rydian's return to the hall. He stepped backward toward the door, hand on latch, eyes still on her. Challenge at bell turn, he said. I'll be there. She almost laughed. You'd better. He left, and the cell air felt emptier and hotter at once. By the time watch lamps were lit in the corridor, Corvus had her chance to move. Nessa came back for the empty bowl and whispered that archive stewards were at feast setup, shelves unwatched until bell turn. Corvus did not ask how Nessa had bought that window. She followed the kitchen route anyway, through a narrow passage where copper pots hung from hooks and onions braided from ceiling beams brushed her shoulder. The archive alcove opened just off the same great hall, hidden behind carved screens of hunting scenes that no one really looked at anymore. Tablets sat in nested racks, clay and slate and bone, each tagged with wax beads by topic. Corvus went to right law and ran her fingers over seal edges until one packet felt wrong, wax too glossy, bead pressed at a slight tilt. She cracked it open. Inside, Claw's order did not match the hall recitation she had heard each conclave season. The emergency pre-bond line sat above consent challenge timing. Too convenient, too neat. A shadow moved at the screen. Rydian stepped in, ducking under a hanging antler lamp. I guessed where you'd go. She did not hide the tablets. Then guess this. Maylor swapped order. His eyes went to the broken seal in her hand. He came closer, slow enough she could have left if she wanted. Can you prove original order? Footnotes. She pointed to the lower edge where tiny chisel marks ran across the margin. He forgot the reference line that binds sequence. Rydian leaned in to read. Their shoulders almost touched. Heat came off him in a low wave, rain damp still clinging to wool. Corvus caught cedar and iron and that sharper note that meant his pulse had kicked up. Her own answered before she asked it to. She hated that answer. She leaned away. He noticed and stepped back first, giving her room without making a show of sacrifice. Good, he said quietly. Then we tear him open in public. She narrowed her eyes. You don't get to say we. His mouth twisted. Fair. They stood with one tablet between them, close enough to hear each other breathe over hall noise filtering through the carved screen. For a moment neither reached for the tablet. His hand lifted an inch, as if to touch her wrist where ash still stained skin. He stopped himself mid-air and let the hand fall. That restraint cut deeper than any grab would have. It told her he was learning where the edge was. Rydian turned the tablet and read again, lips moving on the tiny carved line. Same hall reversal by bell witness and challenger's voice, he murmured. How did I never read this? Because men like Maelor stand in front and read for you. He gave a bleak half-smile. I'm tired of being read to. Hall drums sounded from the feast corridor, announcing pre-vote meal. Delegates would chew game and boast until midnight while clerks prepped tally slates. Corvus should have gone to ground, hidden until hearing. Instead, she stayed in the alcove while Rydian barred the screen with his shoulder and spoke like a man stepping onto thin ice on purpose. I owe you more than apology. He looked straight at her, no sideways calculation now. I wanted your core, yes. I wanted your name on my side, because your name changes outcomes. But I also wanted you. Not as trophy. Not as proof I can command what resists me. I wanted you when you crossed the yard with your coat torn and laughed at my warning. I wanted you when you told my captains their maps lied. I wanted you this afternoon when you looked at me like I was smaller than the rule I used. Corvus's hand tightened on the tablet edge until stone grit bit her skin. You pick strange moments. It was always strange. His laugh came out rough. I thought if I kept it under strategy, it would stay controlled. And now? Now I'm saying it plain because I'm done hiding behind clauses. She watched his throat move when he swallowed. His pupils were wide in the low lamplight. Mine probably are too, she thought, and was angry at that, and alive in it. Want is cheap? She said. I know. Trust is not. I know that too. She took a slow breath through her nose and caught him again. Cedar. Smoke. Male heat threaded with something sharper because they were close and not touching. Her pulse climbed despite herself, each beat a fist against her ribs. She set the tablet down on the rack because her grip had gone unreliable. Rydian read the move for what it was. He did not close distance. He did not pretend he didn't notice. If you tell me to leave, he said, I leave. Corvus touched the raw stripe on her hand, then let it fall. Stay, but don't mistake stay for yes. His shoulders eased a fraction. I won't. They returned to the feast by separate doors, because optics mattered before evidence did. Moonhall's feast spread looked generous to outsiders. Roasted root platters, barley loaves, casks tapped and foaming. Corvus saw the machinery underneath, who sat near whom, who got poured first, who got left standing with empty cup. Nessa moved between trestles with a ladle and the confidence of someone who knew every route through the crowd. At Corvus's pass, Nessa set a bowl down in front of her before anyone else at that table and said loudly, "Hot broth for honored war service." It was the kind of small public gesture that rewrote status in a room obsessed with hierarchy. Exactly the move Corvus had come to expect from her household anchor. Maelor noticed. Of course he noticed. He watched from the high table, fingers drumming his staff in a steady pattern. Corvus met his stare and lifted her spoon, unhurried. At another table, Rydian argued with a cluster of block elders. none of whom were named aloud in the hall, because only titled speakers addressed the bell. Corvus could not hear words, only rhythm. Elders pressing, Rydian refusing, one fist striking wood, Rydian not flinching. When he looked across the room and found her, he did not signal. He simply nodded once, as if confirming a shared plan was still intact. By the time moonlight angled through the upper slits, the hall smell had changed from bread and meat to wax and hot metal. Vote slates were being heated for inscription. Corvus felt her body betray her each time Rydian passed within scent range. Pulse quickening, skin tight at the back of her neck, a current down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. She drank water instead of ale. She counted breaths against the edge of the bowl. She refused to let biology make her decision for her. At one point, he stopped near enough that his sleeve brushed the bench. "Bell soon," he murmured. "I know. Can you read the footnote aloud? If Maelor doesn't cut me off, I'll force him to hold the floor." She tilted her head. "On what authority?" "On the one I still have before I surrender it." Her eyes narrowed. "You're really going to renounce in front of them?" His mouth tightened. "If I don't, you should gut me with your own knife." Nessa appeared behind him with a tray and said, "Deadpan, move or lose your fingers." Rydian moved. Nessa slid Corvus a folded cloth under the bowl. Inside lay a shard of red wax with a hall stamp crushed crooked. Proof. Corvus tucked it into her cuff and kept eating as if nothing had changed. Midnight bell approached like a storm you can hear before you see. Delegates gathered around the dais ring in concentric arcs, witnesses closest, speakers at marked stones, observers filling the back. The same faces from the afternoon humiliation stood there now with cups set aside and mouths tight. Corvus took her place at Challenger's mark. Rydian stood to her right. Nessa stood at the rear witness line in kitchen apron, chin up, hands empty so no one could claim she carried kitchen blades. Maelor mounted the upper step with his tablet chain and struck his staff. "Challenge hearing, deferred by war precedents, now called," he intoned. "Claim under emergency pre-bond remains until disproven by lawful sequence." Corvus lifted her hand. Lawful sequence was altered. Maelor's lip curled. "From whom did you learn legal interpretation, unmoored wolf? A soup kettle." Nessa barked a laugh that cut the room clean. "From your messy waxwork, steward." Maelor pointed his staff at her. "Kitchen witnesses are inadmissible in right matters." Corvus stepped forward before he could continue. "Read footnote on reversal validity." "No." Rydian's voice cracked across him. "Read it." Maelor turned, startled by the command in that single word. "You have no standing against steward procedure while claim is active." Rydian moved into the center ring and drew a breath that expanded his chest like he was bracing for impact. "Then hear formal renunciation. I, Rydian Vale, revoke my emergency pre-bond claim over Corvus. I reject coercive claiming as binding practice in this hall." Sound surged and slammed back, a wave of gasps, curses, someone dropping a cup that shattered on stone. Maelor's face went blank in the way predators go blank before striking. Renunciation void while claim contested. Corvus reached into her cuff and held up the wax shard. "Not if your procedure is tainted." She crossed to the tablet stand, snatched the top slate before Maelor could block her, and read the carved footline aloud, voice sharp enough to split smoke. "In dispute over emergency claim sequence, reversal may be heard and sealed in same hall, under same bell, by witnesses present to initial call." She thrust the tablet toward the witness ring. "Who heard my initial call?" Hands rose. Voices answered. "I heard." "Present." "Witness." Maelor tried to shout over them. "Those signatures are not collected." Nessa stepped to the edge and held out her forearms, flower scars and burn marks visible in torchlight. "I carried his swapped tablets from service corridor to dais shelf. Seal was fresh. I smelled resin. I saw his thumbprint pressed crooked." Maelor snapped. Liar. Nessa did not blink. Then check your thumb. All eyes turned. Mailer's right thumb bore a thin red line where wax had smeared into a skin crease and darkened there. The hall breathed in as one body. Corvus took the moment and drove it home. Same witnesses, same bell, same hall. 42 signed both rights by your own count sheet. She pivoted, pointing to the witness clerk's slate where tally marks sat in paired columns. Call signatures now. The clerk hesitated. Ridian stepped beside the clerk, laid his hand flat on the slate, and said, "Call them." One by one, witnesses moved to the table and pressed sign marks into wax circles. Claw scratches, ring stamps, ink thumb swirls. Corvus watched each mark land, counted without speaking, felt the number lock into place when the last sign set. 42. No one could claim lack of quorum. No one could claim missing eyes. Mailer lifted his staff as if to strike the clerk. Ridian caught the shaft mid-swing, not wrenching, just stopping it dead. "Enough," he said. Maelor bared his teeth. "You would throw away your father's seat for this stray?" Ridian's grip tightened. "I'd rather lose a seat than keep your methods." The reversal bell was struck by the clerk, not the steward. One clear note. Corvus spoke before the echo faded. "I void the coerced claim in full." Ridian answered immediately, voice steady. "I accept voidance and stand without claim." The clerk announced, shaky but audible. "By same hall footnote and witness confirmation, emergency pre-bond claim is reversed." Maelor lunged as if words could still be dragged backward by force. 2 hall guards stepped between him and the dais edge, staffs crossed. Not arrest, not spectacle, just removal from procedural space. He shouted anyway, but he was already outside the circle of authority that mattered in that moment. Nessa exhaled like she had been holding breath since noon and muttered, "About time." War vote proceeded with Maelor seated off the dais and silent, and that silence felt stranger than his voice ever had. Corvus remained at floor level by choice, ash stripe still faint on her hand, no longer a mark of uncontested shame. Ridian voted his block line and then walked away from the upper seats to stand at the wall until tally close. When the final count for war terms was called, he did not celebrate. He watched Corvus instead, as if waiting for permission to approach. She gave none. She also did not leave. After the hall emptied to post-vote feasting, they met in the archive alcove again, because that was where truth had started tonight. Lamps burned lower now. The antler fixture cast hooked shadows across the racks. Corvus placed both palms on the tablet shelf and kept her gaze on chisel lines while he stopped 3 paces back. "It's done," he said. "The legal part." He nodded. "The rest is not." She turned then. "You said you wanted me. You said you'd renounce coercion. You did." Her voice roughened around the edges. "Now you need to hear what comes next before your body writes a story your mouth can't keep." He held still, listening. "I don't become pack property," she said. "I don't wear alpha ownership. I don't hand over command of my core. I don't shrink to fit your council table. If we bond in any form, it is chosen, named, and revocable only by mutual right." Ridian's answer came without pause. "Yes." She narrowed her eyes. "Don't say yes because you want touch tonight." His throat worked. "I want touch tonight. I also want your terms tomorrow." A flicker of heat ran through her at the honesty. She stepped closer until she could see the tiny nick at the edge of his lower lip where he had bitten it during the hearing. Her pulse climbed again, hot and rapid. His scent wrapped around her, less shield now, more skin. She reached up and stopped an inch from his jaw. Last chance to take the easy path and call this political alliance. "No." His voice was low, rough, certain. "I want Corvus, fully. As equal or not at all." She touched him then, fingertips on jaw, thumb at throat where pulse hammered hard enough to feel. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat, then opened them and kept them on her face, not drifting anywhere else. Good. She tugged him down by the collar and kissed him once, firm and brief, tasting salt and smoke, and the held-back hunger of an entire day. When she pulled away, both of them were breathing harder. "Not yet," she said. He swallowed. "Tell me when." She stepped back, deliberately creating space. "When oath is spoken, 2 names. No ownership clause. Then we go to the dais again. At dawn. With witnesses." Nessa's voice drifted from the corridor, dry as scraped bark. "If dawn includes breakfast, I volunteer as witness." Corvus laughed, sudden and real. "You never sleep?" Nessa appeared with her arms full of folded linens destined for the feast hall. "I sleep when powerful men stop inventing rituals to excuse bad choices." She looked between them, assessed their flushed faces, and smirked. "Keep your shirts on until sunrise. I just scrubbed that floor." Dawn came pale through high slits, turning Moonhall smoke blue. The same dais ring stood ready, chalk lines refreshed, bell rope retied. Witnesses gathered again, fewer watchers now, only those bound by night signatures and those who cared enough to stand in cold light after no sleep. Nessa stood near front in a clean apron borrowed from ceremonial stores, hair braided tight, Corvus's household anchor in full view of the hall. Mailer was present by law but seated below rail, staff removed, hands empty. Procedural power had been voted away from him in a same hall motion before dawn meal. He could watch and grind his teeth. Corvus entered first with no banner on her shoulder and no mark at throat. Rydian entered second without airpin. That visual landed harder than speeches. He stepped into the ring and faced her, hands visible, palms unarmed. The clerk spoke the option formulas, voice less shaky than midnight. Parties may dissolve and depart. Parties may enter claim under alpha hierarchy. Parties may enter partner oath under dual naming. Corvus answered before the echoes settled. Dual naming. Rydian matched her. Dual naming. The clerk looked to Maelor out of habit. Maelor said nothing. Silence can become obedience when stripped of a staff. Corvus lifted her right hand, ashtrays faded to near nothing, and spoke each line as if carving it herself. "I name myself Corvus, unowned, choosing bond by will. I keep command of my labor and body. I offer loyalty by consent, not fear." Rydian lifted his hand to mirror hers. "I name myself Rydian, unowned in turn, choosing bond by will. I renounce coercive claim in this hall and in my house. I offer loyalty by consent, not fear." The clerk prompted the final exchange. "Name each other." Corvus held his gaze and said, "I choose Rydian, not as alpha." He answered, voice thick but steady, "I choose Corvus, not as subordinate." They stepped forward together, foreheads touching for the brief ceremonial contact, then separated by equal measure. No one knelt. No one bowed. Nessa, Corvus's household anchor, clapped first, sharp and unapologetic. A few witnesses joined, then more, until the ring held a low thunder of palms striking palms. Maelor did not clap. He stared at the floor where his authority had broken and stayed broken. After the oath, they did not rush to a private room and tear at each other out of accumulated heat, though every nerve in Corvus argued for it. Earned hesitation mattered more than urgency. They walked to the side balcony above the yard where morning air cut through torch smoke and reset breathing. Frost silvered the railing. Down below, stable hands led horses toward the east gate. The war machinery would move soon, with or without romance. Rydian leaned his elbows on stone and looked out, not at her. "I'm afraid," he said. Corvus stood beside him with half a shoulder between them. "Of me. Of failing the oath 2 weeks from now when pressure hits and old reflexes return." He flexed his fingers against the cold rail. I've been taught command since my first memory. Asking feels like weakness in my bones. She considered that. Then we build habits that make asking muscle, not mood. His mouth curved, faint. You assign training plans to intimacy? I assign training plans to anything that can kill me if mishandled. He turned then, finally, and she saw relief in his face, because she had given him practical ground, not pretty promises. Tell me the first drill. When you want something from me, she said, you speak it plain and wait for answer. No maneuver, no legal frame, no implied debt. He nodded. And from you? When I want to run because closeness feels like a trap, I say run, not vanish. They stood with that for a while, breath clouding. Then he reached out slowly, left plenty of time for refusal, and offered his hand palm up. Corvus looked at it, then placed her hand in his. Warm met cold and steadied. By late morning, Moonhall shifted from ritual to departure chaos. Crates thumped, horses snorted, messengers jogged stairs with rolled maps tucked under arm. Corvus collected her peace-tied sword from the holding guard, checked the knot, and retied it herself with firmer pull. The guard avoided her eyes, perhaps ashamed, perhaps only tired. Nessa intercepted her near the kitchen arch with a wrapped parcel. Travel food. Don't argue. Inside were barley cakes and strips of smoked meat, packed tight in cloth and tied with twine. No ceremony, just care. Corvus took the parcel and squeezed Nessa's forearm. You stood when it counted, Corvus said. Nessa rolled her shoulders as if shaking off praise. I stood because I was angry. Turns out anger can be useful if you point it well. She glanced toward the yard where Rydian spoke with quartermasters, then back. He looked at you before every answer this morning. Keep that. Make him earn it daily. I intend to. Nessa's grin flashed. Good. Also, I took Mailer's preferred cup and gave it to Scullery. Tiny victories feed me. Corvus barked a laugh. You're dangerous. Kitchen wolves always were. Rydian approached then, coat thrown over one shoulder, hair still damp from basin wash. He stopped a respectful distance from Nessa and inclined his head. You have my thanks. Nessa sniffed. Keep it. I'd rather have policy. She jabbed a finger at him. No emergency claims on unwilling partners. Put it in house practice. Rydian did not bristle. Done. Good. Nessa stepped back toward the kitchen door. Now go before I assign both of you to peeling turnips as penance. She disappeared inside, humming under her breath. At the east gate, the morning lines split. War blocks taking road, service teams taking ridge paths, merchants packing down awnings. Corvus's tracking corps waited beyond the marker stones. Wolves and scouts she had led through mud and snow for years, all watching her for signals. She raised one hand, palm out, then dropped it in the sign for hold position. No shouted orders needed. Rydian stopped just short of those marker stones. He did not step into her command space uninvited. I ride with the forward column for the first leg, he said. You. Ridge flank. Faster eyes there. He nodded. We'll cross at dusk camp. If roots hold. If roots hold? He agreed. A breeze shifted and brought his scent to her again, layered now with horse leather and steel polish. Her body answered, yes, but not like a trap this time. More like recognition tied to choice. She reached for his coat and straightened the collar where it had folded under itself, a practical touch that lingered one beat longer than required. Ask, she said quietly. He understood. May I kiss you before we ride? You may. He kissed her once at the gate, careful despite urgency, hand light at her jaw. When he pulled back, he looked as if he wanted more and was proud of stopping. Good. Corvus touched the center of his chest where his hairpin would usually sit and found only cloth. No metal suits you, she said. Neither does a leash, he answered. She snorted. Learn fast. He smiled, then mounted and turned toward the road without trying to pull her along. Corvus watched until his column cleared the gate, then whistled her corpse forward and took the ridge path. Stone crunched under boots. Hawks circled above the cliffs. Behind her, Moonhall bell rang a routine quarter mark that sounded ordinary at last. Dusk found them at a wind-cut camp on open ground, fires low to hide light from distant eyes. No grand declarations followed, no spectacle for troops. Corvus finished route reports with her captains, rolled maps, and dismissed them. Ridian finished command briefings under a tarp lit by one shielded lantern. When he came to her fire, he carried 2 tin cups and sat on the opposite log until she shifted her boot and hooked the log closer. They spoke of practical things first. River depth, supply mules, which scouts listened poorly. Then quiet stretched. Not empty, just unforced. Corvus reached across and tapped his wrist. "You asked at the gate, ask now." His mouth curved. "May I touch you?" "Yes." He moved to her side, slow enough to stop at any point. She took his hand and placed it at her waist under cloak folds, then kissed him with no audience and no bell dictating pace. Heat climbed, breath roughened, clothing shifted, and they paused once more when his fingers found the edge of her shirt. He looked at her, waiting. She nodded. Still yes. They crossed that threshold with care earned in daylight arguments and midnight reversals. No ownership language, no claiming bite, no performance for legends, just names spoken against skin as if names themselves were the right that mattered. Later, wrapped in shared blankets while fire burned low, Corvus traced the faded ash line on her hand and felt how different the mark had become. It was no longer sentence. It was scar tissue over a law remade in public and lived in private. Ridian's hand found hers under wool and laced fingers without tightening. Some vows are proven by the next ordinary question asked aloud. Before sleep took them, a small sound came from beyond the firelight. Tin bowl set down on stone. Nessa stood there in travel cloak, having arrived with rear supply carts, and slid the bowl toward Corvus with a look that mixed triumph and annoyance. "Eat," she said. "You win history. You still need stew." Corvus sat up, accepted the bowl, and laughed into the steam. Ridian accepted his share only after asking, "May I?" Nessa pointed her spoon at him. "Keep doing that." He nodded. "I will." Wind moved through the camp grass, carrying smoke, broth, horse sweat, and the sharp, clean scent of frost beginning again. Corvus took a spoonful, then another, and leaned her shoulder against Ridian's while Nessa settled by the fire with boots stretched toward heat. No banner hung over them out here. No staff struck stone. The night held 3 people who had chosen exactly where to stand.